Annalisa Dodds, Labour MEP for the South East. What is it that you see as unfair practice when it comes to the motor racing industry?
Well, I feel it's important that the EU looks into what's going on at the moment within Formula One. Currently we've got a situation where a number of smaller teams have gone into administration or they're really struggling financially. That's had a massive impact on jobs and also on their supply chains as well. Obviously highly qualified workforce which is engaged in that industry. And I really think we've got to look into what's happening. Why is it's the small firms that are really struggling when the larger ones seem to be doing better? I think there's time for an investigation into what's going on.
I mean, two South East firms, in very quick succession going into administration in the same industry, in the same region. Is that more than coincidence, do you feel?
Well, I think that's what we've got to find out, really. A number of people said that given the practices that were going on within Formula One, they predicted there would be these kinds of developments. Now, they're saying that's because of the current setup within Formula One. I don't know whether that's the case. I think that we've really got to have an investigation and find out whether it's the case. We've got to find out whether the current setup is negative for small firms, whether it's treating them unfairly or not. We need to have an investigation.
Why have you come to the EU to do that? Why is that not something that could be carried out by authorities in London?
Well, the EU has been involved in this industry before. So in 2001, it helped to broker an agreement that was meant to set up the rules of the game. Some people have said actually they're not being followed anymore, so there are concerns there. But it's also because, of course, Formula One is an international sport. Actually, it goes even, of course, beyond the EU's borders. But you really need to have a multinational regulator, I think, to deal with some of these issues. Because national governments, they don't really have the capacity. But also, of course, they're tied potentially to different teams within their borders. So I think you need to have an independent, multinational approach to these issues.
And what spurred you to pick up this issue, to look into this and to take it up with the European Commissioner?
Well, I've known people who have worked in the sports in the past, and obviously they've been very concerned about what's happening. And as you mentioned, we have had, unfortunately, some really problematic developments with small teams in the southeast of England. I have to say I'm not a huge expert on Formula One myself. I do remember many Sunday afternoons with my dad sleeping in front of the television, having been watching Formula One and the soporific sound of the cars going past. But on a serious note, of course, this is about big money, this is about big technology, it's about a big amount of jobs in our region, and we need to make sure that it's running right.
How convinced are you that something isn't right? What are the signs, the indications that have led you to taking this up that kind of raising red flags in your mind that something perhaps isn't as it should be?
Well, I've spoken to some of the people involved within the sport, and they've been saying to me they think that there are the grounds to have an investigation. I don't want to prejudice anything by saying that there's definitely something going wrong, but I really think we need to look into why it's the case that you've got small firms really floundering at the moment when their interests were meant to be taken into account within the sport after the agreement that was brokered in 2001.
You met with the European Commissioner. What kind of response did you get from her? What promises has she gone away to say that she'll perhaps come back to you with?
So I wrote to the Competition Commissioner, so that's the top EU civil servant who works on competition issues. I wrote to her last week, setting out some of these concerns. She's received my letter, she's started to think about them, and she said that she is going to write back to me with her response. I'm really hoping that she will take on board those calls to actually start to investigate what's going on. Not prejudging that there's necessarily anything wrong, but saying we need to look into why we've got these small firms going bust or having financial problems at the moment.